Canada, and I'm happy about that because I really believe that investment in Canada generally lifts up the whole country, including Toronto. But they then decide, well, gee, we've got an office in some other place in the country, but we have to be in Toronto. And the reason they have to be here is not just because we have the critical mass of industry here and so on, it's because they recognize the wealth of the talent that we have here and the fact that there are companies like Wealthsimple that are starting and founded and staying here. And that's the part I'm proudest of, by the way, is the companies that are starting up and staying here. And that's the thing I'm working the hardest on with an entire team of people in economic development, Councillor Michael Thompson and others, Mike Williams, who's here today, is to make sure that we have the talent that we can attract here, in the case of people who may have either left or never were here to begin with, and that they then stay here and build their careers and build their lives here. And the two are very much connected. It's about building careers, but also building lives. And that's where the quality of life comes in. And the reason trips like this are important is because in the end, our ability to finance the quality of life that we expect in the city and that we want to preserve going forward is going to be dependent upon prosperity. There is no way that government can finance any of the things we want to do to improve and maintain the quality of life in Toronto without prosperity. The profits made by businesses, the taxes paid by people who work in the city, both those who work today and those who will work tomorrow, are what are going to finance the building of transit and finance the addressing of the housing issue that we have here and finance the supports that we want to provide and must provide for people who are struggling. And all of those things. And so it starts with prosperity, and prosperity and wealth creation only comes from the private sector. And I say that not because you don't understand that, so that you know that I do understand that as somebody who's in public life, but understands that our ability to finance these things and build and maintain a great city with a great quality of life begins and ends with prosperity, so that we can have the resources to finance these kinds of things. And so it is great to be here today to celebrate your great leadership and to say that we want to repeat this over and over again. And part of the purpose of this trip, when I just had a chance to meet some of the group from the business part of it down the hall, and to say that as far as I'm concerned, my entire role in this trip, my entire reason for making the trip, is so that I can help them, help you, to find ways to do more business yourselves from here, to help find people who want to invest here, who are from Israel, where I think a lot of people in Toronto who live here don't understand the incredible success that has been enjoyed there in terms of innovation and technology and life sciences and a variety of other areas. And my objective is to go there, which is seen as one of the hotspots in the world for innovation, find out how they're doing it, find out how they're nurturing it, meet the people who are doing it, and say, we need you to come to Toronto and invest and locate here to be a base for your North American or Canadian operations. Find ways we can establish relationships between people from here and people from there so that they can do business back and forth together. We are a proud center of finance. We have a huge critical mass when it comes to banking and finance, when it comes to life sciences, when it comes to corporate headquarters. And now what we have to do is take advantage of that in two respects. One, we have to make sure that that critical mass that we have in those industries is maintained going forward. And if you look at the banking industry, for example, and the advent of fintech, that is going to bring about profound changes that are going to shake the bank, are in the process of shaking the banking industry to its foundations in terms of causing it to have to change and adapt, just like many other industries have had to do in an area of rapid change. The good news is a lot of the people that are doing the shaking are also here in Toronto, and the further good news is that we're going to take some of those people to meet their counterparts in Israel and to understand how we can have everybody win out of this. The financial industry is strengthened by the fact that it has adapted well to change and has digitized so much of its business that is going to happen going forward, and I think they've embraced that, and that the people who are doing the digitizing, the people who are bringing about the change in these industries are people that flourish here as well. So that we have the disruptors and the people who are bringing about the change and the beneficiaries of that change, which is what the banking industry, for example, ultimately will be. And that is just one example of many different sectors. Last year, I took a group to the Silicon Valley, and we spent the time there encouraging venture capitalists, encouraging companies, encouraging people to come here. We had to tell our story, and one of the things they told me, I'll never forget sitting at a dinner with venture capitalists in San Francisco, and there was maybe 10 of them, and between all they had billions of dollars to be investing, and many of them said they wanted to invest here in our city of Toronto or in the Kitchener-Toronto-Waterloo corridor. But one of them turned to me and said, you know what the problem is with you Canadians? And I said, what's that? not knowing what the answer was going to be, and he said, you don't know how to sell. And what he was meaning is that we're too modest about going forward into the world at large, whether it's Silicon Valley or China, where I went last year, or now to Israel, and saying, you know what, we have something really special going on in the city of Toronto. We have one of the most interesting, inclusive, diverse talent bases anywhere in the world. We have one of the most highly educated populations. In fact, in the OECD, perhaps the most highly educated population anywhere in the world. We have people who are entrepreneurial. We have people who want to work. We have an established critical mass of banking and life, financial services and life sciences and food processing and many, many other businesses. And we want you to come here because we think we can tell you that you and your associates are not only going to enjoy an unparalleled opportunity to create more prosperity, but also an unparalleled opportunity to have a quality of life that is second to none in the world, objectively borne out by a lot of these studies that you see done by organizations that measure where the quality of life is best in the world. And so I'm here today to formally announce something that is no secret to you because it's been in the planning stages, and I want to take this moment to express my very sincere thanks to our own economic development staff in the City of Toronto. They're excellent people who do a lot of good work on these kinds of things and many others, but also to CEJA, because they have worked very hard on putting this trip together in the broadest sense, and to Ben Slotnick in particular, who is someone who's been a bit of a pioneer in urging me from the beginning, I think almost before I was mayor, to say, look, we've got to go out. We've got to take our story to the world. We've got to take our people and our team out to the world to make sure they meet us and we meet them, and we establish these relationships and encourage people to invest here. And so totally in furtherance of that objective, I will be leading a mission, a business and technology mission to Israel from the 12th to the 19th of November. Joining me will be, and he's here this morning, my colleague, Councillor James Pasternak. We left each other late last night. Where is James?
Oh, okay.
There he is. We left each other late last night at an event, and here we are first thing this morning. But James Pasternak will be with us, as well as Councillor Josh Cole, the chair of the TTC, and Councillor Kristen Carmichael-Greb. And we'll also be joined, and these are important, again, connectors that we can use to further the interests of the City of Toronto and for that matter, the Toronto-Waterloo Corridor. Jan De Silva, the President and CEO of the Toronto Region Board of Trade, and Janet Ecker, the President and CEO of the Toronto Financial Services Alliance. And I can assure you, having had both of them along with me when I was in China and Japan, they are most effective ambassadors for the industries, the industry segments, as the Board of Trade represents businesses as a whole, of course, that they represent. And it's very helpful to have them and to be able to exploit their contacts as well in places like China, Japan, and indeed Israel. We will also be taking delegations from our technology and business communities, including representatives of organizations like Homer's Ventures, SecureKey Technologies, Facebook, Incubes, Vuru, and many others. We will be doing, in total, about 50 leaders of the community, business leaders and community leaders will be accompanying me from Toronto to try and make our case, make our pitch, establish new and bigger relationships with people, and ultimately attract investment and jobs, hopefully, and increase the prosperity of Toronto-based firms. We will be doing, I think, of interest, a number of events jointly with the Mayor of Montreal, Denis Coderre, and a delegation he will have at the same time in Israel. This isn't entirely accidental. He and I discussed a year or so ago that we thought it was high time that we acknowledge the fact that in many cases it is Canada that is competing with other countries for investment from around the world, including from Israel. And that if Canada goes forward together, the two biggest cities in the country, I think for the first time, being together on a trip where we're putting our joint best foot forward in terms of saying, come and invest in our country. And I'm not one of those who believe it's a bad thing to see people invest in Montreal. It's a good thing. I'm over there trying to get people to invest in Toronto, obviously. But I'm happy to be there in some of these meetings with the Mayor of Montreal because we're trying to build up Canada to make sure that it's a strong country and a strong player and that it puts its best foot forward. We will have with us as well representatives from Ryerson's DMZ, the Mars Discovery District, the Brookfield Institute for Entrepreneurship. They will also be on the trip. And so I think it's a very impressive delegation. And it is to set out to learn about the rapid growth that we have seen in Israel's innovation ecosystem. We've done well at this, but they have done really well at this. And I'm one of those who believes every day you can go and learn something from somebody else. My former boss and one of my mentors, Ted Rogers, used to say, for the cost of a plane ticket, you can go somewhere, whether you're in business or whether you're in government, and learn a lot from what somebody else is doing, because the notion that we have all the ideas here or we've solved every problem is just not on. And I think in terms of especially growing our fintech and technology sectors here in Toronto, we have a lot to learn from the success they've enjoyed in Israel. As I said, I want to make sure that our Toronto-based companies that are coming with us have an opportunity to expand their markets, and it's often true to say that because of the office of mayor that I'm privileged to hold, we can have access to meetings and to see people that otherwise a startup business might not have found easy to meet on their own, and that's part of the purpose of what we're doing. We are going out to say to the world that we have this huge talent. We have this absolute commitment to innovation here as a fundamental part of our economic growth going forward in this city and in this country, and we're in the process of scaling up. And in that regard, we're also going to be meeting with a number of Israeli companies which have indicated already an interest, together with venture capitalists, in investing and creating jobs here in the city of Toronto, and to make sure we try to close some of those deals, or to get them closer to closing to the point where they're ready to announce that they're coming here. The schedule is busy. I think some of you had a chance to go through it. I'm not a believer in going on these trips and having a lot of time to kind of look out your hotel room window. I think you want to put every minute to work sitting down with people and trying to make our case, and that's exactly what we're doing in the course of visits to Tel Aviv, Ramallah, Jerusalem, Haifa, and Beersheba. We're seeing business people in every one of those locations and seeing some of the key animators of the technology and innovation scene. We'll be visiting the Google Innovation Center in Tel Aviv, the Floor, which is the FinTech Innovation Center, CyberSpark, which is Israel's cyber innovation arena, and Technion, the Israeli Institute of Technology, which itself is world-renowned. We'll be meeting with Israeli-based companies and investors, and I'll be meeting with the mayors, of course, of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to share discussions on other matters of civic interest. For example, I learned through Councillor Pasternak's research efforts that in Tel Aviv, I believe it is, they are in the process of looking at doing, of all things, a rail deck park. That's over a highway, actually, in this case, a highway deck park, but they're going to cover over a highway there, and they're in the process as we are exploring that, and I want to very much have a chance to learn more about that. In the end, we're just trying to make sure that we keep growing in the area that we're growing, which is as a global center of innovation. That when people think of change, when they think of innovation, when they think of a hospitable place for risk takers and people with ideas to do business, they will think of Toronto. And I am, in that regard, happy to introduce somebody that is coming with us and who fits into that category, and will perhaps tell you why he thinks it's important to go on a trip like this. Jamie Shapiro is the president of SecureKey Technologies. It is one of those stars that is making us so proud on the world stage. In this project, and then I'll come back and answer questions.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. After listening to your remarks, I have to start off by noting, as Michael did, just how